Welcome to this presentation on the Kingmaker initiation. Boys are not broken, they are just unbuilt. An initiation holds the key. This presentation is designed for teachers, particularly boys or leaders of boys schools, boys institutions, but I'm going to be predominantly speaking to you as if you are a head teacher watching this. So before I talk about initiation, allow me to introduce myself. I think most importantly, I'm a father of two sons, and I've spent 8 years in the British Army Intelligence Corps, deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, worked alongside Special Forces and Gurkhas, and I once interviewed a suicide bomber in Helmand Province, and I asked him why he would go about doing this. And his answer took me a long time to understand and figure out. And basically what had happened was this guy had been handed a story about who he was before he had been old enough and wise enough to ever question the story. And he had almost lived into it, and he had almost killed him. And obviously there are many people who do live into stories that they are handed to. And in the most extreme cases, they become suicide bombers because they never figure out their own story and never figure out their own uniqueness as to what makes them a unique person and what's their unique mission on planet Earth. After the military, I came back home and I built a gym and I trained over 300 members, and it worked on paper, but I felt hollow, and the gym eventually failed, and I had to clear my debts, start all over again, and I started working on initiation and understanding what initiation is, where it came from, why have we always had it, and why don't we have it now? And I became a father 2 years ago. I now have two sons, and everything that was important about initiation has become very urgent because I learned that a man's nervous system is a direct copy of his father's. And really sad, actually, but inevitably we let our children down, and the children, boys, they require something else to move them into the next phase of their lives, and fathers can't do all of it on their own. So I needed to interrupt the chain of what was going on in my family, and initiation seemed to be the way forward. So I worked with a phenomenal coach who helped me, who initiated me. And I'm going to explain to you what my interpretation of initiation is, and what the reason for it is in this seminar. So what is initiation really? Well, it's a deliberate and structured process that men go through, or have, in all of human history, they have gone through until now. And it is very, very important. It's very important because boys need some structure to follow to reach this place. So what is initiation really? Well, first of all, initiation is deliberate and structured. It is not something that happens to a boy by accident. It's not a pseudo. It's not it's not about drinking loads of beer. It's not about getting laid for the first time. That's not initiation. So what is initiation really? Well, initiation, first of all, is a very deliberate and structured process that every culture knew was needed and has had. And some of the modern day examples are the Maasai warrior tribe, or Maasai tribe, they're not warrior tribe, but they're quite well known for still having this quite deliberate process of initiation. And there's lots of examples. Native Americans still do it, Jewish still do it, and some faiths still practice it. But it has largely been lost in the Western world, and that's a problem. It's not something that happens by accident. It's not a hard year, a tough coach, a difficult father. It is a designed, and the elders are the people who lead the younger men through it. They're not just older, they're elder. There is a difference. They know what they're doing. They know what is being built in what order and why. And the boy is not just stumbling through. He's been walked across a path that was laid out long before him. And so every culture knew that it was needed. From the Maasai in East Africa, the Spartans, we've all heard of Spartans. Aboriginals in Australia, even in medieval Europe, monasteries, regiments, every functioning society in human history has built a pathway from boy to man. And the specifics varied, and but the necessities, the kind of core parts of it, didn't. And a culture that does not initiate its boys does not get fewer men, it gets older boys, and it pays the price for them. And I think that's what we're paying the price for now. Ours is one of the first societies to have run that experiment of stopping this initiation, and the results are in. We have higher suicide rates in men. We have huge amounts of misogyny and cases of misogyny. We fear our younger boys. We're scared of them. We have a lack of boys engaging in schools. So I think initiation is a lost art that we need to bring back. There is a control during initiation. There is a controlled death and a rebirth. What that means a boy walks into it and he doesn't walk out as a boy anymore. He walks out as a man. He walks out as something more mature. Something is buried in the process. The dependency, the smallness, the right to be looked after. Something else is built in its place. Responsibility, capacity, pride, honor. And that's partly why initiation requires something called an ordeal, a challenge, something that they have to get through, push through a little bit. Because life is full of challenges, and most challenge has been taken away from our young people. The death part, the death is about the death of the ego. The ego is simply the identity, and the rebirth is real because the death was real, and it will be witnessed by the village or the community, and that's very significant. One of the things that I learned about male dynamics is that young men are really looking for the approval of older men. That's why you have these unhealthy communities that are brewing up online. You may have seen the documentary The Manosphere. There's huge amounts of boys who are engaged in these communities, and they're getting older men. They're getting approval from older men. That's what's happening. But we have a very disjointed community in terms of age nowadays. So elders are super important. They're super necessary. And without the witnessing, that work just kind of gets lost. So they do the work and then no one witnesses it. They just go back to being a boy. So initiation is very deliberate. It's a witnessed death of the boy, a building of a man, a rebirth, a maturing, and inside a structure that the elders know. They know what they're doing. They know what's happening. And that's what initiation is. It's a very controlled, deliberate process. And like I say, very necessary for men. Men need this. I think girls need it too, but boys perhaps more so. So what does a boy get from doing an initiation? First of all, he will get an identity he did not have to invent on his own. He will stop asking, what is a man? And he will see what is a man. He will stand in a room of other elders, other men who have been through a path, and he'll experience it, and it will be demonstrated to him. It's not going to be just a theory. And that is the question that is kind of driving men into this manosphere, the manosphere, going into these unhealthy, misogynistic, tyrant-like communities. How am I supposed to act? What am I supposed to be like? It needs to be answered. At least, one of the things that these men are doing is they are speaking to our young boys. And clearly there's a need for someone to speak to them. He will get a framework for his own inner workings, a language to describe what's happening inside of him. He'll be able to name his anger. He'll be able to name his withdrawal. He'll be able to name his shadows and move through and heal and learn from them without it being a problem. He will get permission to feel his emotions. He'll understand it. It needs boys and men, they need training on their emotions. And then they will also get the strength to act in accordance with what they believe. So just to do the right thing, is what we might say in culture, in society. So he'll be allowed to grieve. He'll be expected to lead. He'll learn how to love. He'll learn how to hold a standard. He'll learn that he doesn't need to be hard or soft. He can be something more whole in the middle of that, more mature than that, really. He'll get a relationship with what we call ordeal, which it just means challenge. Life is challenging, and we need to deliberately expose our young men to challenge, so they know they're capable. They know they're capable of doing difficult things. Maybe they're going to have a difficult relationship, like we all do. They're going to have a death of a person who they love. They're going to have a business that fails if they go into, or they're going to lose a job. Like, something's going to happen to them. They need to know that they are capable, and they can go through a challenge, and they can get out the other side. True brotherhood. I've been thinking a lot about banter recently. In the UK, we're very good at banter, and banter, I don't think it's good. I think it's, on the whole, very damaging, humiliating, really. Humiliating and minimizing of really important things. So with a true brotherhood, you have a very safe group of boys, of men, who feel very comfortable expressing their emotions around each other, discussing things that really matter, with things that are really important. And that is very necessary. And we've largely lost that. There's no performance in a brotherhood. There's men who have seen you at your going through that ordeal, going through that challenge, and that relationship prevents suicide. If you've got safe communication and somebody's feeling sad, they're able to express it, and then other men can support them. If you've got a community of mates down the pub and you're bantering about how something really horrible is going on, you just feel very lonely. You feel very isolated. I've been in the military where there's been lots of banter, and it's weird. You think you're the only one who's got a problem. You think you're the only one who's going through a challenge. And what I do now is I sit men around fires and we talk about stuff, and men realize that they're not the only one with these challenges. And that's a brotherhood. It's very, very important. And it's something we've always had. We don't have it now. Not in the same way. So a reason to grow up. He's no longer waiting for life to start. He matures. I've had 50-year-old men throw maturity on to the fire as a thing they're letting go of. That should have happened when they were 16, when they were 13, really. He's not waiting for life to start. He has been told on the record that he is a man now, and that something is required from him. So that's what a boy gets. But what does society get? Well, we get men instead of older boys. The figure behind most social pathology, the absent father, the volatile partner, the disengaged worker, the radicalized young man online, is a boy in a man's body, and initiation produces the alternative. I feel as though we will get lower male suicide rates. That's one of the biggest drivers for me. A man with elders, with a brotherhood, with a framework, with language for his emotion, does not die at 4 times the rate of women. The current numbers, which are in my report, they're horrendous. And that's what happens when this technology, this process, is removed from society, or has been removed. We'll have safer women. Misogyny is what immature masculinity does when it has no other outlet. It's leaking out of the men, and it's misguided, because boys are guiding other boys. So boys are performing a show, and other boys see that, and they think that's what they need to be like, but they don't know what that boy's actually going through, because he doesn't show what he's actually going through. It doesn't show how he actually feels. So it's all a performance, and it's very, very confusing. And you feel completely alienated if you're looking at that content online. So safer women, misogyny, is that leakage. A man who has been initiated, he knows he does not need to dominate women to feel like a man. Leadership and control are very different, and they're really confused. And I'm going to get onto this a little bit more later. But he already knows what he is. He's secure in who he is. He knows who he is. The pressure that produces harassment, coercion, and violence will drop. I think we'll have better fathers, and a chain of trauma, really, which has been handed down generation to generation, it will be interrupted. It will be healed, and it will be interrupted. And a man who was initiated can also initiate his son, but likewise, a man who wasn't initiated cannot initiate his son. So the work will compound down generations. And the current crisis is what happens when the generational chain is broken. It's been broken for 3 generations, perhaps running, probably since World War I, World War II. Restoring it is how really we fix our society. But it's going to take a long time. It's going to take 30 odd years, easily. Functional institutions. We get functional institutions. We get schools, workplaces, marriages, and communities that run on the assumption that the men inside them are adults and are capable and are honorable. When they're not, everything is strained. Initiated men carry weight without resentment. They are responsible people. They lead without dominating, and they can be relied upon. We don't have that, really, in society, on the whole. We will have a culture that is no longer afraid of its young men. The current public conversation around boys is not good, is it? It's a mixture of fear, contempt, bewilderment. None of these produce men. None of these conversations produce men. A society that initiates its boys does not have to fear them. It builds them into capable, honourable young men so that they can be relied upon, and we know that then they will do the right thing. We won't have the hoodie youth that we've got knocking about on the streets of our society today. So, examples of initiation and what age. Now, some of this might be triggering to you if you're religious or you don't like the picture of the warrior there. But I'm going to get to why there's these pictures and why these things are here. Well, I think it's quite good. I mean, I think this bridges all cultures. Some kids are going to have some of these cultural influences in their life, but I think largely we don't, as a whole, we don't. So across cultures, the first major initiation almost always lands somewhere between the age of 12 and 15, and it's the onset of puberty. So obviously that's not coincidental. The body is announcing that childhood is ending, and it's pumping you through full of hormones. And culture has traditionally known this and answered it with a process, an initiation. So it makes that ending of childhood official. And biology and the biology of the man and then the ritual of initiation can be together. So the boy's voice changes, the hormones change, physical capacity changes, he becomes stronger. And the elders step in before this becomes chaos. That's what should happen. That's not what happens, obviously. So examples, the Jewish tradition, bar mitzvah at 13, a boy reads from the Torah in front of a community and from that day is considered responsible for his own actions under religious law. In East Africa, the Maasai tribes, first initiation between 12 and 16. This one's a little bit extreme. The boys are circumcised in public ceremony. They are forbidden to flinch through the ceremony and then live a life as a warrior cohort. They live apart. They live a separate warrior cohort for a few years. The Aboriginal Australian cultures, initiation begins between 10 and 12 and unfolds in stages over years. The boy is taken from the women's camp by the men and does not return as the same person. I think this is where there's a big act, where the women are crying and they're like, "No, don't take the boys," and it's all an act. And the men elders come into the village and take the boys off and chuck them into the woods and go into the outback and go and do the initiation process. By the way, I'm not suggesting we do any of this. I'm just showing you some examples of what's happened in the past. The Spartans, we all know the film 300. They go through they went through quite a vigorous thing where the boys were removed from their mothers at 7 for early training, and then the major warrior initiation happened around 12, 13 years old. And then more like modern, I suppose, Christian confirmation, historically 12 to 14-year-olds, marking the age where a child takes on their own faith. And apprentices in medieval Europe, boys placed into master's household around 12 to 14 to begin a long passage into trade or into manhood inside a community of men. So we've always had it. There's loads of other examples. The Romans spring to mind. Native Americans have got some really cool initiation stuff that they still do, modern day stuff. But the point is, the age is the thing. Between 12 and 15, biologically primed, testosterone is rising, the body is reorganizing, energy is looking for shape. He's looking to prove something, to create something. He is psychologically permeable. He's old enough to understand what is happening and young enough to be genuinely changed by it. After 16, the cement starts to set. I mean, I work with guys who are much older than that, and I can still help them. I can still initiate them, but it is harder. Some of the younger guys I've worked with recently, more mid-20s, so much more open and receptive. I guess there's just less conditioning. There's less conditioning that they've had throughout their lives. So if we can start influencing kids, initiating kids at this age, it'd be incredible. So initiation gets harder as they get older, not easier. He is socially ready to leave the mother at this age. This is an important thing. The bond that formed him in childhood is now the bond that will keep him a child if it is not interrupted. The culture interrupts it on purpose. The initiation deliberately interrupts it. It makes the boy into a man. It makes him capable, separates him from the mother. If you're a mother, you're going to hate hearing that. I know, but it needs to happen. Otherwise, you end up with mothering your son for the rest of his life. And then he gets into a relationship and he gets mothered by his wife, which is not good. And there's a knock-on effect in terms of relationships there. So what modern boys get instead, their biological window still opens at the same thing, 12 to 15. Nothing in the system changes. What he does get, he gets a phone. Instead of elders, he gets a phone. Instead of a challenge or an ordeal, he just gets a screen, some games to play on, a social media profile. Instead of this framework, he gets the algorithm giving him more of the kind of stuff that he looks at, and maybe more of the same. He ends up in an echo chamber. Instead of a village, there's the comment section, there's WhatsApp groups. But the hunger is there. They definitely are looking for something. Otherwise, these guys in the manosphere, they wouldn't be so popular. But there's no answer for them. So that's why the school years, I think, between year 8 and year 10, they're the most consequential. That's where the window needs to be. And I think a boy who's met there properly will become a man, and a boy who is not will find his initiation elsewhere, and it will be on the internet, or gangs, or prison. Sometimes going into the military as well. I went into the military, obviously, but military is kind of a pseudo initiation. It's not real. The idea of initiation is teaching, as I'm going to go through in a minute, but like understanding the uniqueness of the man, of the boy, not going into the military, which is like, right, let's shave your hair, wear the same clothes, do the same thing, march the same way, don't ask questions, just kind of leave your identity at home. That's completely not what this kind of initiation is. The initiation assumes that each person, each boy, each man, each human has a uniqueness. If you're religious, you might call it God's work. If you're not religious, you might call it your uniqueness, your inner genius, your thing that you're really good at. And initiation is about figuring out what that is, your purpose. Why are you here on Earth? So anyway, components of initiation: separation, mature male elders, ordeal, witness, teaching, a return, recognition, and a welcome. So the separation, the boy is removed from the familiar, particularly his mother, as I've said, his home, his comforts, his peer group of other boys. The ordinary world is closed behind him. He is taken somewhere else, physically and psychologically. And without that separation, it's very difficult because you're triggered by your environments. Just needs to change the environment. He cannot become a man inside the room that knows him as a child, or inside the environment that knows him as a child. He has to go somewhere else. In some cultures, there's like a specific location that they use, but I find that just going out into the wilderness is the best thing. And also part of that, then you get reconnected with nature. I think we're very separate from nature, but we are from nature. And I think initiation, taking responsibility for things, that is all being connected with nature, taking responsibility for nature and the environment. I think that's part of initiation. Mature male elders, men who have been initiated themselves, they're nearby, they're around. And some of them might be going through their own initiation. You can have intergenerations working together through initiation. Not influences on a screen, not his father on his own. His father can be there, but not alone. A council of men who have walked the road and come back, who are turning to face him and are going to guide him. That's what the mature elders are for. The boy learns what a man is by standing in a room of other men. A framework for what is being built. He's taught a framework. And the elders are not improvising. They've done it. They know it. They get it. And I'm going to show you the framework in a minute. There's the ordeal I've spoken about. It's a real test, something psychological, physical, or both, that the boy can't perform from his current place. He has to reach for something new. He has to go through some pain. He has to go through some fear, some exhaustion, solitude, fasting, exposure. Obviously, some of the examples I've shown you are pretty extreme, but we don't need to be that extreme. They just need something. But the ordeal is what makes that death feel real. And like, for example, I took a bunch of guys recently to Wales and we climbed a mountain, and I came back down and I was like, yeah, do you know what? I can do hard things. And I knew I could do hard things, but it was just a confirmation of it. It's like, yeah, I can still do hard things. Still capable, still got it. Can still climb mountains. And that will translate. And obviously that happened for me. It happened for the other guys who were there. And I was the one leading it. So the elders are important. The elders witness, they watch him. They don't perform it for him. The boy, if you suffer alone and you're not recognized, it doesn't feel real. So you need recognition and witnessing. Obviously there's teaching, could be teaching about all sorts of things, about responsibility, about sex, about death, about anger, fatherhood, shadow, service, what's required of him now as a man. The wisdom transfer happens, and I think it always happens around a fire. You know, for men, there's something I can't explain. There is some science, but there's something around sitting around a fire you just can't replace, I don't think. There is this key part, which is the return and welcome home. He is brought back into his community, and the community knows that he's been through it, and they treat him, some cultures, they name him differently, but they treat him differently, and he's recognized, and he's given new responsibilities. And it's not ceremony for the sake of it. It is a serious thing that everyone's involved in, because a village has a new man in it, and that's a thing to celebrate, because men are key, and they need to know their key to society. You know, most of the rhetoric now is that men aren't necessary, men don't need us, women don't need men anymore. It's not really true. We need men. We need great men. We don't need boys. We don't need any boys. Well, we do need boys, but we don't need as many boys. Immature behavior that we've got. And without that final step, the work kind of will undo itself. I mean, everything will make a difference, but that if the boy goes home and his mother still calls him for dinner in the same way, or still treats him in the same way, you know, doesn't expect him to act as a man, then he's got nothing to live into. So it's very important that everyone knows about this. So how might that work in a school? Separation, it's quite simple, really. You take the boys out of school, of the building. It's not a school trip. but it's framed as what it is. It's an initiation, or it's a crossing of something. It could be a residential weekend in Dartmoor. I climbed the mountains, Brecon Beacons. In the US, there's loads of stuff. You've got mountains, you've got wilderness, but there's no phones, there's no technology, there's no parents, there's no teachers or uninitiated people around. Everyone there is an elder, including some of the mature men who may be teachers and champions, what I'm going to speak about later. But the people are there. They're psychologically different. It's geographically different. The boy who arrives as Jack from year 9 who makes jokes is not who's being addressed out there. Something else is being addressed, and he will notice it. For the school that cannot run residentials, the same principle can hold true at a smaller scale. So like a Friday evening to Sunday on the school grounds, like maybe you've got a field, set up some tents and you got a fire, and it can be created. It just needs to be psychologically different. Some kind of different rhythm, some sense of togetherness which happens and forms that brotherhood. I've spoken a lot about the mature male elders. I'm not sure if those guys in the picture there are mature male elders or not, but they look good. But this is the piece that schools already have and they don't deliberately use. So some kind of council of men, male teachers. I'm going to suggest that we initiate both the teachers and we have some champions. I'm going to talk about this a bit later. We have we have the fathers, parents, and there's some kind of council who are leading and responsible for the initiation in the school. Because if you rely on external facilitators, then first of all, really expensive. Second of all, we can't be around all the time. We're not integral to the lives of the boys. We're going to be around here and there. We can drop in. We can be there for the initiations. We can be there for the education stuff, but we can't be there day to day answering the sort of day to day stuff. It needs to be everyone involved in this, I think. And I know it's a big responsibility, but it will only benefit. It only benefits the individual and the society. So it is no, it's a great thing. I always say it's a mountain with no top. You can keep going. You can keep going and understanding who you are more and more clearly. And let's cancel that bit. So this council of men, male teachers, parents, maybe people, fathers from the community who have done their own work. They've got something to offer. Maybe they've been in the military. Maybe they're clergymen. Maybe they're coaches, the head teacher, the caretaker, whoever. But people who have done the work on themselves. 5 to 10 male men standing in a cohort. They're kind of there for the duration of the initiation. The boys do not need them to be heroes. That's quite important. They need them to be men who have stopped pretending to be anything except themselves. That's the most important thing. But they learn that, those men will learn that anyway. Men who can hold silence, men who do not flinch when a 14-year-old asks something real about sex, about women, about porn, about drugs, about his suicidal thoughts. Men who will look him in the eye when he is at the edge of something and not look away. They can just hold that space for them. It's very important. So phase 1 of the Kingmaker, which I'm going to talk about later, is initiating the teachers. Without those men who have done that crossing themselves, there won't be a council, and there's actually just adults supervising an activity. The framework, this book here is phenomenal, and this is what a large amount of my work is based around: the king, the warrior, the magician, the lover. You might realize that this program is called the Kingmaker because ultimately the king is the one who is going to give the direction. He's the leader, and the warrior, the magician, the lover are other parts of us. So boys are going to be taught this. I'm going to explain it to you in a minute a little bit deeper. But it's not theory. It's more of a map about how they can encounter themselves and why things happen in life. Why does he freeze in certain situations? Why does he want to dominate the group in some situations? Why does he go silent and disappear? It gives him a language for understanding himself. And he's not just having an individual experience. He's going to see other boys relate to this, and then they're all going to realize that they're all having this very similar experience. Because at the moment we just use banter to minimize. We don't really talk about this stuff deeply. And obviously that happens with men. So the king is the ultimate, direction giver. So in his fullness, as a mature king, a man as a king, he is able to set direction and hold standards. He leads from identity, not performance. He creates order without needing control. He is generative. His presence regulates others, and his word means something. What typically happens is that we are in shadow, and the immature poles are the passive pole, where a man is weak, and the active pole where a man is tyrant. So tyrant controls through fear, anger, withdrawing, makes mistakes. Mistakes dominance for strength. Team, if he has a team, so I'm usually delivering this to entrepreneurs and business owners. The team performs out of fear. Maybe you're a boy who has who's the captain of a team, and he's giving everyone a hard time, and ironically they'll perform for 90 days, but they'll resent it, and if it's a business, they'll leave, and they'll leave their jobs. So it doesn't really inspire true, authentic leadership. No commitment from your team. Partner walks around on eggshells, or kids will walk around on eggshells around you. Now, we have the weakling, where this man or this boy is abdicating responsibility, avoiding conflict, agreeing with everyone, standing for nothing. His business drifts. His family does not know him, permanently waiting for permission to act. Now, what happens is that these boys, they see these boys, and they seem really powerful. They seem like they are strong. And so the weaklings, they flip between the two. They go over they become tyrannical, and then they get burnt. They get put back in their box. They get told that it's not the way to be sometimes, unless they end up brainwashed and stay over there. And so then they go back to being weak, and they go back to tyrant. And there's no opportunity for them to mature. There's no pathway. There's very few kings around, so they don't meet many kings. I meet very few men who are like this, and so they have no role model. They just have this social media persona of a tyrant, and they see that as being more powerful, and probably they think they're the tyrants themselves think they're powerful. So that's the basic kind of framework: the king, the magician, the tyrant, and the weakling. This is the simplest thing. It does go a little deeper. The warrior, the magician, the lover, the king. These are kind of energies that run through us as men, and really as women as well. You could just call it the queen. But the warrior governs the body, discipline, and aggression, without it being too much, where you burn out, you force, you get unnecessary conflict, without it being completely passive, where you're very much like the weak king, your avoidance, procrastination, tolerance of weakness. We see a lot of sadist warrior. I'd say it's kind of if we think culturally among men, we see a lot of burnout. We see a lot of arguing for the sake of arguing, completely unnecessarily. The magician holds awareness, strategy, and insight without manipulation or paralysis. So he's like the problem solver. He's the strategist. Now, in too much of that, we get manipulator. We see loads of manipulation going on, particularly in the manosphere space, because ultimately they're trying to get people to sign up to their programs. Withholding certain truths. That happens a lot. Overthinking. So the weaker side of that is the spiritual bypass, the avoidance of responsibility. So very similar. And then the lover. I think the lover is probably the most suppressed one in British society, and the one that we need to work on the most. We need to be fully alive. When he's mature, fully alive, emotionally present, connected without losing himself. Addicted lover is validation seeking, intense, like the overly passionate man who goes all in on relationships and loses everything else. Needs approval. Again, that shows up a lot. Popularity contests, likes on social media, living by the likes on social media, only doing things for likes on social media. That's the addicted lover. And then we have the cold, numbness, withdrawal, the emotionally absent. So this is the map. This is the work that was done by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette in the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And it's phenomenal. It's really phenomenal. It's helped me a lot. And this is the framework that I would teach in the schools. So how does it work in schools? The ordeal. So that was the framework. This is the ordeal. The ordeal. Well, this is the challenge part, really. This is something that's real. It's going to be very much scaled to the age group, designed by the elders, by men who know what they're doing. Could be something like a night under a tarp in the woods. It could be a long hike. It could be some cold water immersion. It could be a silent fast. It could be climbing a mountain in bad weather. It could be all sorts of things, but it must be quite hard. But it also needs to be safe. Obviously, we're not going to be doing some of those other examples that I spoke about earlier. It must be controlled, supervised, age appropriate, risk assessed, all of that sort of thing. The elders don't abandon the boy in the ordeal. They're watching closely, but they're trying to appear as though they're not. Schools already run Duke of Edinburgh. There's CCF, Combined Cadet Force. There's outdoor education weeks. These infrastructures already exist, but what's missing is the frame of it being an initiation. And I know when I did D of E, I kind of liked it because I just liked being outside and hiking and stuff. But it did just feel a bit like a meaningless hike when I was at school. And it needs, with the same thing framed as a passage with initiation. I know this happens because this is what I create with my men when I take them camping and take them on initiation. When they know they're going on initiation, when they know that this is a deliberate challenge to see what they're made of, to see if they can overcome challenge, it's completely different. It's completely different. So that's what it can be quite simple. It can be quite simple. Witness. I said it earlier, but boys really, really crave the approval and recognition of older men. And it doesn't happen, really. So, the boy who carried the heavy pack on the hike, he needs to know that the older man saw him do it. The boy who held, the boy who did the cold water immersion, he needs to be told in front of the boy who did something hard needs to be told in front of others by an older man that he did it and he did it really well. He must be acknowledged. If a boy broke down and showed his emotions, he must be celebrated for it. He must be acknowledged for breaking down and continuing. It doesn't necessarily mean prizes or certificates, but it means like a man's hand on his shoulder and clear words and recognition, maybe in a circle in front of the rest of the boys, recorded on record. And the boy will remember that. He will remember that for so long, for the rest of his life. But he won't keep the certificate. He really won't. We've had so many examples of this because we have some younger guys coming mid-20s, and we have older guys coming sort of 50 and above. And when an older man turns around to one of the younger men, and he says, "You are phenomenal. Do you know that? Like it's really incredible what you're doing." And the younger man just goes, "Wow, I didn't. Thank you. I didn't know." And it just means so much more coming from the older guy. So that's important. Witness. The teaching part, obviously, I like around the fire. What it means, I've already touched on this, but we can teach all sorts of things about being a man, what it means to be a man, what it means to be responsible for what to do with anger, what about pornography and what's it doing to you, about sex, about his father, what does it cost to be the man who will stand by his word and tell the truth in a room, about suicide. And this is not about you don't do this, I know there's things that exist, but often these things happen when a boy is really shut down and is in crisis mode. We're trying to do this before the crisis ever occurs, and give the boys the brotherhood, the tools, the feeling of being able to cope with life. And it just lands. It lands when he's in that environment. So in the army, we had medals, men, and we have ceremony, recognition, welcome back home, thank you for your service. So we need the same. But men need that. It works. The military have been doing it for many, many years. Men die for medals. Men will go to war for medals. I went for war for medals. I've got my medals right here. Still display them, even though I'm a advocate for world peace. But he comes back to the school, and the school knows. The school knows that he's done what he's been doing over the weekend. The institutional buy-in, everyone knows. The boys who have completed the crossing, they're named in an assembly. They're given a token, a pin, a cord, a band, something that is small and visible, but other boys recognize, and other boys know that they've done that. They're initiated. They're capable. They're given new responsibilities. They're treated differently. They get the opportunity to start mentoring younger boys, leading other boys, leading councils, get duties. Female staff are briefed. Mothers are written to. The community knows that another cohort has been initiated. And without this, the boy goes home to his mum, and his mum says, "Don't forget to do your homework," in the same voice. And that work starts to undo it. There's no change in his real life, at home. The return is not for him. The return is from everyone else. Because the school now has, it's a celebration that the school now has a new cohort of young men in it, just like that village celebrates having a new man in it. And then the cohort, the community needs to treat him appropriately. So what would this look like on a school calendar? This is just an example. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. If you're interested in working with me on this, then we can just create something a bit more specific and clear for your school and your situation. But the ideal thing would probably be around year 8. They get introduced to the framework, into the elders. The boys are introduced to the framework. The elders are introduced. Like the facilitators are going to be introduced. And the weekend is named. They've got something that they know that's coming up. Year 9, the crossing weekend happens. So they do 3 nights off-site, no phones, and they have this ordeal, this first challenge. In year 9, later in the term, so summer term onwards, they return. They've got new responsibilities. There's an after-school club to help them keep learning, keep going, keep holding themselves to higher standards. I was just doing that weekly. And then there's a second, harder expedition set for year 10. So they come back and they do another level. And then year 10 and 11, they continue doing that work. The boys who have crossed that now, they get the responsibility of being junior witnesses and assistants to the next cohort. So there's this full circle passing back. And by the time they leave school at 16 or 18, they'll have been on that road for 3 to 4 years with elders, with a structure, witnessed by the institution. And that's what a school can do. The algorithms can't do that. AI won't be able to do this either. So there's got to be a 3-phase approach to this. First thing is you've got to educate, initiate the teachers and those who want to be champions. So the principle here is you cannot pour from an empty cup. A male teacher who has not made the crossing or initiation himself can't really stand in that circle of boys and hold the space that needs to be held, because he needs to understand himself first. He can supervise, but he can't initiate. So phase 1 is about producing the men who will stand around those boys, the champions who will be there for the next 10 years of the school's life, and they'll be integral to the boys' life. So who will be in that room would be all the teaching staff would first attend a keynote. So everyone, male and female, they all know what's going on, because everyone matters in the society, in the community. Everyone in the building affects the masculine culture. And the women teaching boys also need to understand the framework as well as the men do. From there, there's usually a self-selecting group who will step forward and want to be the champions, and male teachers willing to serve as frontline elders, plus perhaps a small number of female champions who can hold the architecture around the work. They can still assist. They won't be able to really initiate, but they can still educate, they can still guide. There are examples in some tribal societies where the female elders are also quite integral to taming the male, taming the younger man. Delivery. I see this being a half-day keynote, so a full workshop for the staff, and where we talk about the crisis, the situation, we'd be honest about it. I introduce the framework of King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. We have a discussion about how that shows up in your teaching community. Perhaps for your PE teacher is a bit of a tyrant. Who knows? So you just identify it so that the teachers can learn it themselves, and they can leave with the language that they didn't have when they walked in. And then an optional level after that would be a residential weekend, kind of exactly the same format as I would do with the children. They go off site, we go off site, we do an ordeal, we put our phones away, we do a challenge, we sit around the fire, and we discuss this stuff. We have so you have the separation, the ordeal, the witness, the teaching, and then a celebration and return. The men who come back from that weekend will definitely be different, and the school will feel it for sure. And then celebration, is important as well, recognition. Then after that, there would be also an ongoing initiation pathway for those who want to develop it, who want to be the champions, because these are the most important ones, because their influence is just so key to everyone else, and the kids as well. So that would look like monthly group sessions throughout the academic year. Could be online support, but preferably in person with a fire, always better. And then within the school, a small council of men inside who are doing their own work together on record together. They meet regularly. But that's going to be the main engine, this council of they're going to be the main engine that fuels the rest of the process. So the output of that is, like I said, this council of 5 to 10 initiated men inside the school, plus wider circle of staff who understand the framework. The school now has elders. Without this, the phase 3, where we initiate the boys, becomes quite difficult. And you have a reliance on external facilitators to do it, which, like I said before, is not only just expensive, we're not there all the time, not like the teachers are. So we can't have these off the cuff conversations, in the moment conversations. Phase 2, train and initiate the parents, with a focus on the fathers or the key male caregivers. So the boy goes home every night after school. And if the home, it's going to be tough, but the home is likely to contradict everything that we are teaching them, initiating them. So ideally, in the ideal world, we would also initiate the fathers and at least teach the parents. So the father who never initiated themselves cannot initiate their son, but they can be brought into the work, given the framework, and asked to hold the line in their own house. Mothers too need to know what's been built so they can stop accidentally undoing it. So who is in the room in this scenario? Well, all parents are invited. Fathers and primary male caregivers are specifically named and educated. The session is framed not as a workshop, but as a briefing. This is what we're going to do to your son, or we're going to do with your son. This is why we need support from you. The frame really matters. Fathers turn up to that briefing. They don't turn up to a parenting workshop. It's not how they need to act. It's just this is the language. So the delivery would be an evening keynote for all the parents, 2 hours, same sort of thing, name the crisis, give them the language, and teach them about it. The specific way it shows up at home, hopefully, would be the boy who, the way this shows up at home is the boy who's gone silent, the boy who's on his phone for too long, 9 hours a day, the boy who's rude to his mother, the boy who's never too good, he never says what he wants. Sorry, he is too good, never says what he wants. Parents leave with with a map of their son's interior. They understand what's going on with the boy. And then after that, we can have some follow-on sessions for the fathers who want to be involved in this and do their own work, where they can ask some questions that they can't ask in front of their wives. Questions like, what's pornography doing to my son? what maybe it's more personal, like what did their own absent father do to them? What does it mean to be a man? For sure, the parents are going to have questions if they're engaged in this and want to be engaged. But what would be great for this is where we get another council, which is a parent council, a room for the fathers who are forming their own brotherhood, who are forming their own council, and they can also be involved in the initiation. So 6 to 10 parents, fathers predominantly, who meet termly with their schools, lead elders, and they're a bridge between the institution of the school and the wider community of the parents. And they can carry that work and that language into the WhatsApp groups, into the parent-teacher associations, the dinner party conversations, into the culture, and they can really just get it out there. And so that output would be that community of parents who know what is being built, why it's being built, and what's being asked of them, and a subset of fathers who are doing their own work alongside their sons. A home environment that reinforces the school's work instead of contradicting it. I mean, that would be incredible. I know, big challenge. And then the final stage is initiating the boys, which I've already spoken about. Don't think there's too much to add there. But yeah, I mean, the initiation of the boys, it can be done at any age. But like I said, and like I've spoken about, the ideal would be the younger one. And I think it really would, it would still make a difference doing just the boys. For sure it would. But this is the trifecta I think would work incredibly well, all in together. All right. So next steps then. Obviously, this is not going to be for every school. It's really for you if you're a head teacher watching this, you're an educator, and you realise there's a problem. Imagine if you've watched this far, you've watched me talk for this long, you really, really do know there's a problem, and you want to do something about it. Feel free to book a 15-minute discovery call, and so I can diagnose the challenge, I can understand the challenge, what your community is facing, what your school is facing, and then after that we'll do a 60-minute deep dive, fact find, and we will design something around your budgets and your constraints, and we will understand your situation fully so that we can initiate our boys and have them lead a life that is aligned with who they are and their purpose, and rather than live their life, live as men, live as kings rather than as boys. I'll leave you with this. Most men were never initiators. They were just educated, employed, and eventually they got old. This program interrupts that chain. Thank you for watching. Look forward to meeting you, and lots of love. There's the link. I'll see you on the flip side.